Hello everyone. Today I want to show a lovely game played in 1893, a long time ago, between Siegbert Tarrasch and Mr. Romberg, who was a casual player. And to balance out the strength differential, White was playing with the rook down. So Mr. Tarrasch has to now go for an attack very quickly and very swiftly in order to hold his own. Let's check out the game. White starts with e4. We have e5. Knight f3, knight c6, and d4. It would be the Scotch opening had it been a normal game. E takes, and bishop c4. Bishop c5, but knight g5 immediately, not bothering with castling, going for f7 right away. Knight h6, defending, and queen h5. So to some extent, white is ignoring opening principles, but this is how you play when you are playing with odds and against a weaker opponent. Black castles, very sensible. f4 even. Queen e8, putting pressure down the e file, defending f7, and white castles. d3 check, you've run into the line of the bishop. King goes to h1 and d takes c2. Black grabs another pawn. So black is up a rook and 2 pawns now. So if black can consolidate and defend the attack, then all good. Knight c3, just developing. And d6, opening the line for the c8 bishop. But f5, caging that bishop in and preparing some other threats against black's king. Knight e5, going after the bishop on c4, but knight d5. The idea is to prepare f6, and that comes with a terrible threat. But king h8 getting out of the way, so there will be no f6, g captures, and knight into f6, forking the king and queen. But this is not a very accurate move. In fact, black had a huge advantage, which is now neutralized. This position is judged equal because, and we'll come to why. After knight d5, if knight eg4 is played, that's fine. It defends the knight on h6, which will need defense once f6 is played by white. h3, kicking the knight away, and c6. We swap knights, h takes g4 and c takes d5. Bishop takes d5 and king h8 goes now. This is okay. Apart from that, after knight d5, even queen d8 could be played, and black retains the advantage, so this is also fine. But after king h8, you have f6, and this is what makes the game equal, because it's going to bust open the king side, put pressure on the h6 knight. And here it's important to play knight e takes g4, defending h6, but h3, c6 as we saw before, and we have a swap. But first we have f takes g7 here. It'll lure the king out. And after king takes g7, which is really forced unless you want to lose a rook for no reason, h takes g4, c takes d5, and there is a knight into h7 now, opening the bishop's attack to the h6 knight. But knight g4, getting out of the way, and queen g5. And this will force a perpetual. King into h7, queen h5, king g7, and queen g5. So white can force a repetition of moves and get a draw, being a rook down. So that would also be quite good, technically speaking, that if you can manage a draw while being a rook down. It's admirable, no doubt, and you in fact even sacked a piece in addition. However, after f6, bishop g4 was played, trying to kick the queen away, but this does not work. There's a beautiful combination which Mr. Tarrasch calculated perfectly. He played f takes g7 check, king takes g7, and I will ask you to pause the video to calculate the move. The follow-up is queen takes h6 check. There is really no decent way to decline the queen sacrifice, because queen into h7 would be checkmate. So king into h6, and now we've run into the line of the bishop. Knight to e6 check, guarding g7. So now the king cannot retreat. The king has to come up the board, and that always is a bad sign, in the middle game at least. King h5, and knight d to f4. The e6 knight remains there because it has to guard g7. That's why it's important to move the d knight and not the e knight. h6, king h6, forced to go into the line of the bishop, but knight e2 check now. King g6 was played. You could prolong the game here by sacrificing material like bishop to e3 and bishop into e3, and that would go into a slightly different line. But we should check out the perfect defense as well. This is also very beautiful. King would go to h5. Rook takes f5. We sacrifice the major pieces here as well, and that also happens in the real game when we'll see how. Bishop takes f5 and knight g3 now, forcing either king g4 or king h4. King g4 would be met by bishop e2. You have to give up the knight and just suffer for a move more. King h4, and now knight takes f5. This was why we had sacrificed the rook at the end, that there would be no bishop left on g4 to prevent knight f5. And if after knight g3 you go king h4 first, then bishop g5 comes. That's why also the knight on e6 is very important, helping coordinate the attack. King g4 and bishop e2 now. Only move to prolong the game is knight f3, and bishop takes f3 is also checkmate, a beautiful checkmate, we may say. But after knight e2 check, king g6 was played, and this allows another beautiful sacrifice. I mentioned it before that all the major pieces are sacrificed even in the real game. Rook f6 comes right there. King into f6, forced. Bishop g5. The king can't run away to e7 either. King g6 and simply knight to f4. And that is a wonderful checkmate. This beautiful checkmate and the coordination between the minor pieces is what made me want to show this game. Well, thank you all for watching. I'll see you soon for the next game.